Hi everyone and welcome to ExamRevision.ie Junior Cycle Business Prediction video 2025. You're all very welcome. So just in the next couple of minutes going to take you through this year's exam and just I suppose we call it predictions, but just a look at key topics that come up in this year's Junior Cycle Business Studies paper. What with the topics I have included here, it's not necessarily that they're definitely going to come up, but we just have a look back at trends in the last couple of years for the business paper. Obviously, there's been quite a bit of change in it since the old paper to the new junior cycle, where we've went from 2 papers to 1 and 1 2-hour exam. So let's get going. So first of all, just talk about it here now. Let's have a look at the normal layout and the timings of the paper. So as you can see up here, okay, this is just, I've taken this from the actual exam papers, the instructions. So there are going to be 2 sections to the examination paper. Section A is 15 short questions. Each short question is worth 6 marks, so that's 90 marks in total. And then you have your section B, which is your longer questions. So there's 3 of those, and they're 180 marks in total. So 270 marks for the paper. The short questions worth 90 marks, like I said before, which is equivalent to 33.3% of the exam. And then you've got your 3 long questions that are 180 marks, and that's equivalent to 66.6% of your exams. Each question is worth 60 marks, so 22.2% for each of those. So in total, 270. My advice for the first section is, for the short questions, I would give yourself approximately 40 minutes in terms of time for it. In terms of the long questions, so you got about 1 hour and 20 minutes. So break that down per question. It's about 25 minutes each question. Now, some questions take a little bit more time than others, but give or take in around 25 minutes. So then obviously you've got your 2-hour exam. So just a couple of general tips, okay, for the paper itself. So label all your questions clearly, okay, and in particular what I mean by that is make sure you label all extra work clearly in the additional writing space at the end of the paper. So as examiners, you have to go on and you have to link, the examiners will have to check those back pages, okay, to make sure and they are linked to the questions that you do in the main section. So just make sure you clearly label them for the examiner. So if it's question 16A part I or part II or whatever the case may be. So, you've gone to the bother of going to the additional writing space. Just make sure that you clearly link them to the particular question that you were doing. As well as that, get straight to the point. Okay, I always say to my students, no waffling. So in junior cycle business, just get straight down to the point with no introductions. I know it's good English, say for argument's sake, and we'll look at a couple of exam questions here now in a second, but when it comes to some of the questions, if it says, for instance, outline 2 advantages of the European Union for Ireland, don't start off your question. One advantage of European Union for Ireland is, so quite often, especially students, if they've got quite big handwriting, you can fill up that space, and therefore you're limiting the amount of marks you can get. So I would just get straight into it, straight to the point, okay, as quickly as you possibly can. Now, something you're going to hear me refer to, try use the C approach, okay, when you're answering questions. So state your heading, state a heading, okay, then explain that, and then give an example if you possibly can. Now, it's not always needed, the example, unless the question particularly asks for it, okay, but if you possibly can, it's good to back up your theory with a real life example. And then just practice your timings, okay. Timing is very important. You shouldn't run out of time in the exam. You should have plenty of time, but just practice your timings just in case you're someone who the paper takes quite a bit of time for. Now let's look at the command words for the exam, okay. The 3 most popular are these 3 that I have up here at the very top of the page. So you've got outline, explain, and calculate. Now outline questions, so for argument's sake, outline the role or outline 2 roles that cultural enterprises, okay, play for society, or something to that effect. Now normally that's broken down 2 at 3 marks, something to that. And then so each of the 3 marks will be broken down into 0, 2, or 3. So the 2 marks generally it goes for if you gave a stated heading or something of relevance that we're looking for. that will be 2 marks, and then 3 mark will be your development of your point. So there needs to be something extra on top of that, okay? Your explain questions then, what they do is they follow the 0, 1, 3 normally. So that's 1 point. So if you give us something of value, that will be 1 mark, okay, go towards, say for instance, a heading or a bullet point, whatever the case may be. But then to develop that point, you would get your extra 2 marks to get your 3 marks in total for that particular one. And then the last one is calculate. So you more than likely will get asked to calculate quite a number of things, okay, whether that be ratios, whether that be calculate final accounts, your ledgers, your analyzed cash book, your budget. So make sure you've got obviously your calculator with you, and always double check your calculations then as well. Then a couple of the rest of them here. So we've got state, okay, we've got draw and label, we've got identify, tick, place, and complete and balance. So just be aware of all the different command words that are available for the exam, okay, and then know what each one means. Right, so let's get into it here. Let's have a look at the short questions. So short questions come from all 3 strands of the business course. So from strand 1, 2, and 3, there will be 15 questions in total for the paper, okay, and they cover all 3 sections. So my advice here for this, you must answer all 15. Make sure you write 2 full sentences instead of 1 long sentence. Just be wary of that, because sometimes students just don't give enough in terms of writing there. So make sure you've clearly explained your point. So I would always say write 2 small full sentences to explain. Again, provide examples which I've talked about. Read through all the questions, and I'd put a question mark or an X maybe beside some of the questions you're unsure of, and then come back to those at the end of the exam, so you could build up your confidence with the ones you know, and then go back on the ones maybe further on in the exam to try and have a go at those. Aim for 2 to 3 minutes per question, and then practice, practice, practice. That's what we're looking for. Now, the next section is your long questions. So section B. So you have 3 long questions. And what I've done here is just have a look, okay, at this. You must answer all 3 long questions. Use the state, explain, example method. And so here's an example. So identify 2 benefits of membership with the European Union for Ireland. Okay, so if we have a look at this here, we'll say a larger market. So there's your state, and then go on to explain. Irish consumers or Irish businesses have access to EU market for approximately 450 million people, in comparison to approximately 5 million people living in Ireland. So you've stated and you've explained, and they can obviously make sales to those. Okay, so it's a larger market. Free trade. Irish consumers and businesses can buy goods and services from other EU countries without having to pay extra cost. For example, tariffs. Okay, so you've kind of given your state, explain, and then your tariffs is then your example in there then too. So again, it's just the use of that state, explain, example, just to maximize, okay, your marks. And the same here then goes again, okay, discuss 2 roles that social enterprise plays in society. So again, you've seen here, create employment, that's your stated heading. Every social enterprise set up needs people to run the enterprise. Some jobs are voluntary filled by volunteers, but some jobs are paid. For example, a CEO of Pieta House would be paid. So you got your state, explain using 2 small little sentences, and then you got your example then at the end. So, moving on. Let's have a look here just before we go on any further. So just to highlight here at ExamRevision.ie, okay, we have a complete revision package, and then if you use our code down here, 2025 tips for 10% off a package. So there's hundreds of bite-sized video tutorials that make learning easier for students. So this is what you get as part of the complete revision package. You get on-demand video tutorial guides 24/7 with your entire subject. And again, you can use this code here in order to get 10% off a package. So you get a wide variety of PowerPoint presentations, distinction notes, marking schemes, quizzes, reflection logs. There's quite a lot on there. So we have 8 junior cycle subjects. All subjects come with exam papers and marking schemes. So obviously you see business down here, but then we've got a wide variety of others then as well, which French, Spanish, and religion in September 2025. So they're all fully completed. Okay. And then if you knew someone as well, at leaving certificates, we've got fully completed. There's 21 of them. And then there's all other subjects with exam papers and marking schemes. This is just some of our student reviews. Okay, so you'll see quite a lot of them saying the video tutorials are an absolute game changer. Okay, for my studying journey, 10 out of 10 website, saved my dreams to stay in a higher level maths, helped me to go from a H7 to a H4. Okay, so we've helped quite a lot of students, okay, prepare for their exams. Now, into the main aspect of it, guys. Okay, so exam analysis for June. So we're just look at the 3 strands and then have a look at a couple of common topics, ones that we feel like we should study a bit further. So these are the learning outcomes for Strand 1.1 here on personal finance. So the ones that I've highlighted in yellow, so obviously there was no junior cert in 2020 and 2021. So we've just have a look at the strand here. And so from there you see income and expenditures came up every single year. We've looked at saving, investing and borrowing has came up in both a short and long question every year so far. Insurance has cropped up, okay, every single year so far, whether it be a short or long question. And then they also like to ask about consumer rights and responsibilities, consumer agencies and financial institutions then as well. So in terms of obviously consumer rights and responsibilities, make sure you know the Sale of Goods Supply Service Act 1980, Consumer Protection Act 2007, and the various aspects or principles of them acts. Income and expenditure then as well, they've asked, okay, it's been question 1 there for 3 years in a row, and then it's also part of a longer question in 2024 then as well. So just a couple, we'll put 6 or 7 here together. So income and expenditure, know all the different types, regular, irregular, benefit in kind. Saving, investing, borrowing, they've liked to ask. So no factors involved, but saving, investing and borrowing, make sure you know how to calculate, okay, savings and borrowings. So one question came up there a few years ago, and comparing two financial comparisons. Insurance is one they like to ask, whether a short or long question. Make sure you know your principles of insurance, all the types of insurance, okay, factors that you take in consideration when calculating. Make sure you understand the main people, the assessor, okay, actuary, calculating the premium, compensation, all of that. So we have a look into insurance, how to calculate different premiums then as well, home, health, etc., and fill out proposal forms too. And consumer rights and responsibilities, consumer agencies, again, they might ask you to write a letter or an email in relation to a consumer complaint, and how you have to highlight your rights or rights under one of the acts, and then ask for a form of redress, and then again the income and expenditure too. So having a look at strand 2, which is the enterprise strand, okay, so just again, having a look back over the last couple of years, so we see financial and social and cultural enterprises has come up every single year as a short question. So the difference between them, make sure you know examples of them, I'll be able to explain. Employer and employee rights and responsibilities came up every single year so far. So quite often, the employees' rights is the same as the employees' rights is the same as an employer's responsibilities, so they're kind of the opposite quite a lot of the time. But at a very minimum, make sure you know 2 for each there: 2 employers' rights and 2 employees' rights, and 2 employer and employee rights and responsibilities. Next one we have a look at is marketing mix. Now last year that came up, question 16 and 17, and then the 3 years previous to that it also came up too. So could potentially come up as a short question this year. Make sure you know your 4 P's, aspects of all the 4 P's, so product, price, promotion, place. Next up is business documents. So business documents has came up as a short question for every year so far, okay, and this year potentially maybe it might come up as a long question. Maybe they might put a combination of an order form, an invoice, put that together, or a statement, you just never know. So make sure you know all your business documents and how to calculate, and also how to deal with those documents. Okay, so what do you do before you send them out, and what do you do if you get them in? So what is your checklist, your go-to, how to deal with them? And then you've got your cash account and your final accounts. This is something I'll talk about here now more in a second. So again, just to highlight in terms of Strand 2 enterprise, the 3 that we've talked about here already, very, very important, very, very popular, come up quite often. And then the last one, okay, so almost every year they're going to ask either a cash account or a ledger. or a final account. Now last year the ledger came up, so I will be saying potentially maybe final account might come up again this year, but who knows? We don't know, but I can be guaranteed that they're definitely going to ask us, I would say, some aspect of either final account or ledger questions. It might be in the short questions, or it may be part of a long question. So we'll watch and see what comes up. But make sure you know your final accounts. Take your time. What I would say is have a system where you go through your trial balance to make sure you know where everything goes. And I can imagine that they probably won't give it a full blank one if a final account comes up. What they might do is they might give you, say for instance, an income statement 1 is completed and then headings for income statement 2, and you have to fill in the calculations for the rest of the account. Now, the last one let's look at, we'll look at Strand 3, our economy. So let's look at this here. So again, some popular ones are supply and demand. They've liked to ask of all 4 years so far. Government revenue and expenditure, which is a nice one. It's quite easy, quite straightforward, where you got to calculate whether it's been a government surplus or to be a government deficit, and then maybe how you deal with that, how you'd overcome it, or if you have a surplus, what are you going to do with it from a government perspective. That's a nice one to come up. Globalization of trade, so you're talking about ICT with international trade. Benefits and challenges of EU membership to Ireland, which we briefly talked about earlier in the video too. Again, that's came up every single year so far, some aspect of that. Very, very topical right now, particularly with Trump's tariffs, etc. So make sure you know benefits and challenges of EU membership from an Irish perspective. And then economic indicators, so your interest rates, economic growth, exchange rates, okay, and how they affect the economy, unemployment or employment levels, how they affect the economy, and what are how they affect the economy. And then lastly, government economic policy. Okay, so they might put in a little mini case study in terms of, you know, a decision they've made in the last number of years, and then say, right, well, what would be the social, economic, or environmental benefit of this particular policy, or who will benefit or who will lose out as a result of this policy. So maybe a cost benefit analysis in there. So overall, again, just a summary here. So the probable questions for June 2025. So you got supply and demand, government revenue expenditure, globalization of trade, benefits and challenges of membership of the European Union, economic indicators, and government economic policy. And that's that. I wish everyone the very, very best of luck in your exam in June. I know the syllabus is very, very long, you know, just 40 chapters or so. Try to condense it a wee bit there for you, and hopefully that might have helped. And just a final reminder here, you can follow us on social media channels, so examrevision.ie across multiple platforms. And thank you for joining us today.